welcome to Cutting Edge Tactical. So today for our first video, we're going to be breaking down flexions versus vertical flexions versus lateral flexions and the difference and why we use them. So let's get into the video. A very detailed video on lateral versus vertical flexions. It's already detailed because we're already talking about these two specific topics. So first I want to talk about our lateral flexion. So we're going to use this when we're starting with our younger horses, or when we're just not even the horse, some of us got some bad old horses, so this is going to be helpful for the old horses too. But when we're basically, to break it down, is when we're first starting with our younger or newer horses that have never had this before. We could have a 10-year-old off the track thoroughbred and it's just not soft. So this is what our lateral flexions are for. It's the first thing that I like to do when I'm trying to get a horse soft, because it's the easiest way without having to wrestle their head down to get them soft. And that's why we're using it, because trying to get them collected up, trying to get them breaking at the withers or breaking at the pole when they're not soft at all and they have all they've done in their life is be heavy and fight pressure, that is really hard to do. When it's really hard to put contact with two reins and try to get them soft, because you don't have much leverage. With these lateral flexions, you have a lot more leverage, and so that's why we're going to use these instead of trying to get them collected up right off the bat, get them doing all these other stuff. So that's why we're going to start with this type of lateral flexion. So now that we kind of know when to use it and why we're going to try to use this instead of vertical flexion, let's get into kind of now how are we going to teach our horses to do this. And so how we're going to teach our horse to laterally flex is it's a combination between your legs and your hand. So a lot of people, a misconception is they think that it's all hand. It's the same as collection. People see that headset and they think it's all about the head. Same with flexion, or teaching your horse to flex in a circle. They think that it's all about the head when we're really bending the body. So we're using our feet just as much as we're using our hands. So when our horse is walking in a circle, we're going to use our inside leg as kind of the anchor. So let's say that we're walking to the left. We're going to use our inside leg to hold that horse accountable for holding those ribs out. So basically we're trying to push the ribs around. So we're going to use our left leg and we're going to basically push their ribs out and try to arc their body. And you can see how when I go like this, my head naturally goes that direction. And so that's basically the same idea with our horses, is when we push their ribs, they're naturally going to get soft, right here, like that. And so that inside leg is that anchor, and that inside leg is going to push those ribs over, and that outside leg is going to bump on the outside or kind of kick. So my thing is I don't like to use that outside leg like as much steady pressure as I do with the inside leg. So the inside leg is more like steady pressure, like I'm not really kicking or anything unless I need to roll my spur or something. It's more like the anchor. But the outside leg is a little different, because that leg, I don't want to kind of confuse the two. So I like to make it very black and white, to where, okay, the inside leg is trying to hold you. The outside leg is what's bumping and creating that so that they keep arcing around. So now to the outside leg. What is the outside leg doing? Essentially, with the outside leg is kind of to supplement. So you're not always going to be using the outside leg. Rather, the inside leg, you're always going to have some pressure, because the inside leg, you're trying to get your horse to arc and circle around the inside leg, and the outside leg is basically to keep them from fading too much to the outside. So basically, your inside leg, you're going to take your outside leg, mess that up totally, whatever. So you're going to have.
This is going to be our vertical flexion. Our vertical flexion is when we're using our inside rein and our inside leg, and we're using our outside leg to push the horse around our inside rein, and especially push the horse around our inside leg. So I can use my spur to push the ribs out over here. So basically, it's not all about the face, it's also about the ribs. You want there to be an arc in the horse's body, and so that's what this inside leg does. So when they're not getting soft, that's when we use this inside leg to push the ribs out. And when they're not arcing around our leg, we use that outside leg to really push their body around this outside leg. Our inside leg. So our inside leg is the anchor, and our outside leg is to push them around the anchor. So that's how you're going to get that round circle, is by using that inside spur to push the ribs out, inside hand to get that nose soft, and outside leg. Now you're going to have to supplement with certain ones. So if your horse isn't getting soft in the face, you might use your inside spur and roll it in their stomach a little bit to get those ribs out, because a lot of times the problem in the face is a problem in the feet. The problem in the feet is with we need to get his ribs softer. So that's what I mean by that, is you got to push those ribs out and get that body arcing to get that nose soft. Sometimes your horse may be bowing out one way where they don't want to, where they're scared of something, or they're just overreacting to that inside leg, and they're staying straight instead of bending. So you're going to have to use that outside leg to really push them around that inside leg.
Have your inside leg, and your outside leg is to bump and to push them around that inside leg, so that the inside leg is kind of like the anchor, like I've said a million times. The outside leg is just bumping, and so if your horse starts to drift out of the circle, just tap with that outside leg. Maybe use a spur if you need to. Now that's one thing I kind of want to drift off on here, is it's really important that you use spurs to do this. It's going to be really hard to get your horses to bend their ribs and do all this if you're not using spurs, okay? So make sure that you use spurs, because like I said, it's just not going to, you're really not going to be trying to help yourself if you're trying to do this with your bare boot. It's going to be more confusing to your horse anyways, of like what you're trying to do, because we're trying to target specific areas here, and if you're confusing your cues and mixing them up, well then your horse, they're just not going to get it with your bare heel. So I'd honestly say it's almost more fair to use a spur so you're clearer and your horse can get the idea sooner. So outside leg is pushing them around your inside leg. Now make sure that they don't get numb to your inside leg and they don't get numb to your outside leg. So what does this mean? Well, this means when they do what you want, don't keep your spur on their side. Don't have too much pressure. Now, me personally, I always have some pressure with my inside leg. Not that much. Sometimes it's just a little bit of my calf. But I never leave my spur, or with my outside leg especially. I always make sure when I use it, I'm very effective, so that my horse doesn't get annoyed, or they just, not annoyed, but just start ignoring it. It's like when kids have these ponies and they're always kicking, and these ponies just say, hell with you. I ain't listening to your kicking, which it's a goddamn pony. It can do whatever the hell it wants, I guess. But anyways, so make sure you're very decisive with your cues of what you want. So when they start bending their ribs, they start getting soft, release. So when you're starting to teach them to flex, you're going to release right away when they give you a little bit. So then again, now that we kind of know what all of our body is supposed to do, now for teaching it, it's just like anything else. We're going to ask for one step of that softness, 2 steps, 3 steps, a full circle. So you're just going to start slow. Now, a big part of teaching this is using that inside and outside leg. So if you go to pick up on your rein to ask that nose to bend and they're stiff, use that inside leg, roll that spur on their belly, and they're naturally going to go like that. The minute they kind of, ouch, don't do that, and they get soft, release. And so eventually you don't have to use all that pressure to get them to do that. And again, use that outside leg so that they don't just fade off. You don't want them to get in a habit of just blowing out with the shoulder. So the kind of the issue you can have with flexions is that you disconnect the head too much from the shoulder and they blow out. And to kind of prevent this, we want to make sure that they keep kind of respecting our legs and respecting that outside leg. So when you ask those ribs to bend and to come around and you ask them to flex, make sure that if they start to go out this way, you really get after them with that outside leg so they understand, no, we don't just run with our shoulders while holding our head this way. That's not what this is about. This is about the ribs and getting an arc in the horse's body. Okay, so when you're teaching this, just do it both ways. Keep asking the horse to get soft. Make sure they're not stiff. And same thing, if they get stiff, use that inside leg to push the ribs out, and that'll help them get softer. Don't always go to your hand. Once in a while, you're going to have to obviously bump with your hand or something, but this shouldn't always be the case. Sometimes you're just going to have to use your spur and roll it on their ribs a little bit, and they'll get soft to you and then release. Okay, so now we kind of got our flexions covered. So key things. Inside leg is your anchor. Outside leg is to push them around your inside leg. Your hand is to keep that nose soft. Make sure they don't start blowing out in the shoulder. And make sure to take small steps because this is a pretty simple thing. But don't rush it at first. When they get soft, release. And keep asking for more as you go. Okay, so our next thing now is going to be our vertical flexion. And the reason I like this is because this is kind of like you have elementary and then you have this intermediate step in between that is really going to help you get your kind of end result of collection or a soft horse or whatever you want. And the reason it's kind of an intermediate step is because it's not a lateral flexion, but it's not collection quite yet. It's kind of the right, like in the middle. Like, you kind of have your lateral flexion over here, you have your collection, and then you have this, which is right in the middle. So, basically, once your horse is really good at the lateral flexion, then you want to start moving into this vertical. I'm trying not to get them mixed up. Vertical flexion. So, vertical is exactly what it sounds like. It's not going to be total collection, but it's not going to be total lateral. It's going to be kind of right there. So it's basically you're going to ask your horse to kind of break at the wither, break at the pull, pick up their back, bend their ribs a little bit, and have a slight tip to the inside. So this is kind of the difference, is you're kind of going to be you're still using one rein. You might use a little bit of the other rein, but it's not medium contact on both reins.
All right, so here now, we're going to do our more vertical kind of flexion. So vertical is going to be a little more like your collection. So it's going to be a little more down, not down, but just a little more not to the side. So still going to use this inside leg. And I'm just going to pick up a little more like this with one rein. And I'm going to drive them forward. And we're still going to kind of stay in a circle here. It's just going to be a little bigger. And see how we got him collected, but we got him collected in an arc. And it's more not to the side, it's more down and like a collection position. This is just another kind of exercise that's going to help your horse get softer, and especially when you want to start teaching collection, this is going to be something that'll help. So see, I pick up here, inside spur, outside leg right now to get him turn. So there to get him to turn, I use my outside leg. And here, inside hand, roll that spur when he's not listening. And I'm just pushing him in this circle and keeping him soft like that, more like that. And this horse could still use a little work on this here. But I hope you can see the difference to where you got lateral like this. Lateral is more crossed. Vertical is more in like collection. And same kind of deal with the legs. The inside leg is going to help pick up that back and break up the ribs. Whoa.
So let's really get into it. So when you're teaching this vertical flexion, you want to make sure your lateral flexion is really good, and then you kind of want to move into it to where when you pick up that inside rein. Now the difference is instead of picking up over here, you're picking up like this. You pick up and you're using that inside spur and you're kind of rolling it on their belly a little bit, and they're gonna pick up their back a little more for this one. The other one they're kind of, and they're gonna bend their ribs a little bit, and they're just kind of gonna get soft. And it's gonna be a little different because like you're picking up different. You're picking up more towards you with that one rein. Now the reason I say is you can use the other rein a little bit is because if your horse is doing too much lateral flexion, because you can use the other rein just a little bit is because if your horse is doing too much lateral flexion, then you're going to need that other rein to kind of supplement, to kind of say, hey, no, we're not quite doing that right now. We're doing something a little different. So when you're first teaching, you're going to use that inside leg as an anchor like we just talked about. Outside leg, same deal, is to kind of just push them around a little bit, keep them in that circle. Your hand is going to pull kind of more towards your hip, kind of your leg, and it's going to pick up a little bit and use that inside leg. And it's just kind of a feel thing, but there's going to be a difference because when you pull towards you and up a little bit, it's going to be different than around and here. It's going to be more like this. And if your horse has that understanding from your flexions how to get soft, they'll probably pick this up pretty quickly. But a little outside rein if you need it. Again, this is kind of all a feel thing. And wait until that horse kind of tucks its chin a little bit, bends at the ribs, lifts up his back, and then you release. And it's just kind of the next step. And this is how you're going to lead into your collection. So really make sure that when you're doing this, that you release when your horse does what you want. And as you progress, you can get to where you can do it in a full circle. You can switch directions, and you can do both directions really good. So basically, your lateral flexions are going to be more beginner stage to the side. Your vertical flexions are going to be when you're starting to want to advance your horse into more collection. It's going to be more down. Your horse is still going to have their nose tipped to the inside, but it's going to be more down to the side instead of laterally just to the side. It's going to be more down to the side. And you're still going to use your inside leg and your outside leg the exact same. And this is how you're going to lead your horse in the collection.